The rain poured down on downtown Seattle as 12-year-old twins Marcus and Michael huddled in the doorway of Sterling Industries' towering headquarters. In Marcus's torn backpack lay a crumpled notebook that would soon change everything. CEO Richard Sterling had built his empire by recognizing opportunity, but he never expected it to come from two homeless kids with a revolutionary idea. Before we get to this wonderful story, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now let's get back to the story. Marcus pressed his face against the glass doors of the 52-story building, watching well-dressed executives hurry through the polished lobby. His breath fogged the window as he traced the Sterling Industries logo with his finger. Beside him, Michael shivered in a jacket 3 sizes too big, holes worn through the elbows from months of street living. "Think he's up there right now?" Marcus whispered, pointing toward the top floors. "Making his millions while we're down here with nothing," Michael replied, but without bitterness. The twins had learned that anger was a luxury they couldn't afford on the streets. What the boys didn't know was that Richard Sterling was indeed in his penthouse office at that very moment, staring at quarterly reports that painted a devastating picture. Sterling Industries, once the king of sustainable technology, was hemorrhaging money. Their latest green energy project had failed spectacularly, costing investors nearly $300 million. The board was demanding answers, competitors were circling like vultures, and Richard's 25-year legacy was crumbling. "We need a miracle," Richard muttered to himself, loosening his silk tie as he gazed out at the Seattle skyline. At 58, the self-made billionaire had faced countless challenges, but this felt different. This felt like an ending. Down in the lobby, security guard Tom Rodriguez noticed the twins taking shelter. A father of 3 himself, Tom's heart ached seeing kids so young living rough. He approached the doors, his hand hovering over the intercom button to call for their removal. Standard protocol demanded it, but something about the way the boy was drawing on that cardboard made him pause. Marcus had pulled out a piece of flattened cardboard and was sketching furiously with a stub of pencil he'd found in a dumpster. His drawings weren't childish doodles. They were complex diagrams showing wind patterns, solar absorption rates, and energy conversion calculations that would have impressed engineering professors. "You see that?" Tom whispered to his colleague Janet Kim, pointing at Marcus's work. "That kid's drawing some serious technical stuff." Janet adjusted her glasses, studying the sketches through the glass. As a former engineering student herself, she recognized the sophistication of the designs. "Those aren't random drawings," she said slowly. "That's advanced renewable energy system design." The twins had been living on the streets for 7 months since their grandmother died, leaving them with no other family and no place to go. Foster care had been a nightmare of temporary placements and broken promises, so they'd chosen the streets over another false hope. But their grandmother had been a retired mathematics professor, and in those precious years before her death, she'd filled their young minds with knowledge that most adults couldn't comprehend. "Remember what Grandma taught us about energy efficiency?" Marcus said to Michael, showing him the calculations. "Look at this building. They're wasting 30% of their power through poor thermal regulation." Michael nodded, understanding immediately. The twins had developed an almost telepathic connection during their months of survival. And their wind collection system is positioned wrong for Seattle's weather patterns. "If we could just tell someone," Marcus said wistfully, "we could save them millions." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Richard Sterling himself, striding through the lobby with the purposeful energy of a man carrying the weight of an empire. His $5,000 suit was immaculate, his silver hair perfectly styled, but the twins could see the exhaustion in his eyes. He moved past them without a glance, just another obstacle between him and his waiting car. As Richard reached for the door handle, Marcus made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "Mr. Sterling?" the boy called out, his voice barely audible above the rain. Richard paused, hand on the door. In his current state of mind, he was in no mood for interruptions, especially from street kids who might be looking for handouts. He turned slowly, his expression guarded. "We know how to fix your energy problem," Michael said quietly, stepping beside his brother. Richard's eyebrows rose in disbelief. These children, wet and shivering in the doorway, claimed to understand his company's most pressing crisis. It was absurd. "I'm sorry, boys, but I don't have time for—" "You lost $300 million on the Cascade project because your turbine placement ignored the Puget Sound wind shear patterns," Marcus interrupted, his voice gaining confidence. "The angle calculations were wrong by 17 degrees. Richard froze. The Cascade project details weren't public knowledge. The specific technical failures were known only to his engineering team and select board members. How could a homeless child know such precise information? "Your thermal regulation system is losing energy through the south-facing windows between 2 and 4 p.m. daily," Michael added. "We've been watching your building for months. The inefficiency is costing you approximately $847 per day." The security guards exchanged glances. Tom and Janet had been working the lobby long enough to recognize when something extraordinary was happening. Richard studied the twins more carefully. Beneath the dirt and worn clothes, he saw something that reminded him of himself at their age. Hungry eyes, not for food, but for recognition, for someone to see what they could offer the world. "How do you know this?" Richard asked, his voice softer now. Marcus held up his notebook, pages worn and water-stained, but filled with meticulous calculations and diagrams. "Our grandmother taught us about energy systems before she died. We've been living near your building for months, studying the problems." "And you think you know how to solve them?" Richard's tone was skeptical, but no longer dismissive. "We don't think," Michael replied with quiet confidence. "We know." Richard glanced at his watch. He had a board meeting in an hour where he'd have to explain why Sterling Industries was on the brink of bankruptcy. Every conventional solution had failed. Every expert had been consulted. What did he have to lose by listening to two kids who might see something his highly paid consultants had missed? "You have 5 minutes," Richard said, motioning them toward the elevator. Tom and Janet watched in amazement as the billionaire CEO led two homeless children toward the executive floors. It was unprecedented, possibly insane, and definitely not in any corporate protocol manual. The elevator ride to the 47th floor passed in tense silence. Marcus clutched his notebook while Michael studied the building's internal structure through the glass walls. Richard wondered if he'd completely lost his mind, bringing street children to his executive office. His reputation was already hanging by a thread. This could be the final blow. The elevator doors opened to reveal Richard's assistant, Patricia Wells, whose perfectly composed expression cracked when she saw the twins. "Mr. Sterling," she asked, clearly struggling to process the situation, "your 2 o'clock meeting with the board has been postponed," Richard said firmly. "Hold all my calls." Patricia nodded slowly, though her eyes remained fixed on Marcus and Michael with barely concealed confusion. Richard's office was a monument to success, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Seattle, original artwork worth more than most homes, and technology that represented the cutting edge of business innovation. The twins took it all in silently, not with the wide-eyed wonder of children, but with the analytical gaze of problem-solvers studying a new environment. "Impressive," Marcus said simply, moving toward the windows. But he wasn't admiring the view. He was studying the building's external structure. "Your office orientation is optimal for natural light," Michael observed, "but the heating system is fighting against the solar gain, classic efficiency paradox." Richard sat behind his massive desk, still struggling to believe he was taking business advice from 12-year-old homeless children. "Show me what you think you know." Marcus opened his notebook, revealing pages of calculations that would have impressed MIT professors. The handwriting was careful and precise, the mathematical formulas complex and innovative. He began explaining their observations with a clarity that suggested deep understanding rather than memorized facts. "Your Cascade project failed because it used standard wind modeling," Marcus began, placing his finger on a detailed diagram. "But Seattle's geography creates unique atmospheric conditions. The Olympic Mountains channel wind in ways that most models don't account for." Michael joined his brother, pointing to another section of calculations. "We've been tracking wind patterns from our observation point near your building. The data shows a 17-degree variance from your turbine positioning." Richard leaned forward, his business instincts engaging despite his disbelief. What observation point? The twins exchanged a glance. The overpass near the waterfront, Marcus admitted quietly. We've been living there since October. The revelation hit Richard harder than expected. These children had been homeless in Seattle's harsh winter, yet they'd spent their time studying his company's problems instead of focusing solely on survival. Their dedication was both heartbreaking and inspiring. Continue, Richard said, his voice gentler now. For the next 30 minutes, the twins laid out a comprehensive analysis of Sterling Industries' energy inefficiencies. They had identified problems that Richard's team of experts had missed, proposed solutions that were both innovative and practical, and demonstrated an understanding of renewable energy systems that rivaled graduate-level knowledge. Your thermal regulation could be improved by 37% with strategic window film placement and HVAC rerouting, Michael explained. The cost would be minimal compared to the energy savings. And the wind project could be salvaged, Marcus added excitedly, by repositioning the turbines based on actual Seattle weather patterns rather than generic models. Richard studied their work, cross-referencing their calculations with his own knowledge of the industry. Everything they'd presented was not only feasible, but brilliant. These homeless children had solved problems that had stumped his engineering department for months. How long did this take you? Richard asked, flipping through pages of detailed analysis. About 3 months, Marcus replied. We had a lot of time to observe and calculate. Our grandmother always said that the best solutions come from seeing patterns others miss, Michael added softly. She taught us to look at problems differently. Richard closed the notebook and studied the twins' faces. In them, he saw reflections of his own younger self, the hungry immigrant kid who'd built an empire through sheer determination and unconventional thinking. But these children had advantages he'd never possessed: natural brilliance, innovative minds, and the ability to see solutions where others saw only obstacles. Where are your parents? Richard asked gently. Dead, Marcus replied without emotion. Car accident when we were 6. Grandma raised us until she got sick. Foster care didn't work out, Michael added. Too many rules, not enough understanding. Richard's heart clenched. These extraordinary children had been failed by every system designed to protect them. They'd chosen the uncertainty of the streets over the false promises of institutional care. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Patricia's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Sterling, the board is asking about the delayed meeting. They're growing concerned. Richard looked at the twins, then at their notebook full of revolutionary ideas. A plan was forming in his mind, audacious, unprecedented, and possibly the salvation of his company. Patricia, he said into the intercom, reschedule the board meeting for 4 p.m. Tell them I have a presentation that will change everything. After she acknowledged, Richard turned back to Marcus and Michael. I want to propose something that will sound crazy to everyone involved, including yourselves. The twins waited silently, their intelligent eyes fixed on his face. I want you to present your findings to my board of directors, Richard continued. I want you to show them what you've shown me. Marcus and Michael exchanged one of their wordless communications, entire conversations passing between them in seconds. They won't listen to us, Michael said finally. We're just homeless kids. You're brilliant problem solvers, Richard corrected, and right now, my company needs exactly that. He stood and moved to his window, looking out at the city where these children had been surviving on the streets while developing solutions to save his empire. I built this company by taking risks, Richard said, turning back to them, by seeing potential where others saw only problems. 25 years ago, I was a poor immigrant with big ideas and no credentials. People laughed at me too. Marcus straightened slightly. What are you saying? I'm saying that if your solutions work, and I believe they will, Sterling Industries will owe you a debt that goes far beyond money. The twins looked at each other again, their silent communication continuing. We're in, Marcus said finally, speaking for both of them. Richard smiled for the first time in months. Then let's change some minds. The next 3 hours were a whirlwind of preparation. Richard arranged for the twins to shower and change into clothes that Patricia had emergency ordered from a nearby department store. While they cleaned up, he had his engineering team run preliminary calculations based on the boys' suggestions. The results were staggering. If the twins' projections were correct, their thermal regulation improvements alone would save Sterling Industries over $2 million annually. The wind project modifications could salvage the entire $300 million investment and turn it into the company's most profitable venture. "Sir," his chief engineer, Dr. Sarah Martinez, called with excitement barely contained in her voice, "these calculations are extraordinary. Where did you find this analysis?" "You'll meet the consultants shortly," Richard replied, glancing at the clock. The board meeting was in 20 minutes. When Marcus and Michael emerged from the executive washroom, they looked like different children. Clean clothes revealed that they were actually well-built and healthy, despite months of poor nutrition. Their hair, properly washed, showed natural waves that spoke of good genetics. But most importantly, their eyes remained sharp and intelligent, the fire of brilliant minds undimmed by their circumstances. "Ready?" Richard asked. The twins nodded, Marcus clutching their notebook with nervous energy. The Sterling Industries boardroom was an intimidating space designed to project power and success. The massive oak table could seat 20 people, surrounded by leather chairs that cost more than most cars. Today, 14 board members waited with barely concealed impatience for Richard's explanation of the delayed meeting. Richard entered first, followed by the twins. The reaction was immediate and predictable. "Richard, what is this?" demanded Margaret Chen, the board's longest-serving member. "We're here to discuss the company's financial crisis, not whatever this is." "This," Richard said calmly, "is the solution to our crisis." Board member James Morrison, a man whose skepticism was legendary, leaned back in his chair with obvious disbelief. "You're telling us that children are going to solve problems that our engineering department couldn't?" "I'm telling you to listen with open minds," Richard replied, gesturing for Marcus and Michael to approach the presentation screen. The twins moved forward with quiet confidence, their street-hardened survival instincts now focused on this new kind of challenge. Marcus opened their notebook while Michael connected a tablet they'd been given to the room's display system. "Distinguished board members," Marcus began, his voice clear and steady, "over the past 3 months, we've conducted an independent analysis of Sterling Industries' energy efficiency problems." A few board members exchanged amused glances, but Dr. Martinez, who'd reviewed their calculations earlier, watched with intense interest. "Your Cascade project failed due to fundamental misunderstanding of local atmospheric conditions," Michael continued, pulling up detailed wind pattern analyses. "Standard modeling doesn't account for the unique geographical factors affecting the Puget Sound region." As the twins began their presentation, the atmosphere in the room gradually shifted. Initial amusement gave way to curiosity, then to growing amazement. The children's analysis was comprehensive, their solutions innovative, and their understanding of complex engineering principles was undeniable. Margaret Chen leaned forward, studying the thermal regulation proposals. "These efficiency improvements, the calculations appear sound." "They are sound," Dr. Martinez confirmed. "I've verified the mathematics. The projected savings are conservative, if anything." James Morrison's skepticism was cracking. "How did you gather this data?" Marcus and Michael exchanged a glance before Marcus answered honestly. "We've been living near the Sterling Industries building for 7 months. We had extensive time to observe and analyze." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. These children had been homeless, surviving on Seattle's streets, yet they dedicated their time to studying and solving the company's problems. "The wind project can be salvaged," Michael continued, moving to the next presentation slide. "Repositioning the turbines based on actual local weather patterns rather than generic models will increase efficiency by 43%. Board member Lisa Rodriguez, an investment banker with 3 decades of experience, raised her hand. "What's your background?" "Your education." "Our grandmother taught us mathematics and engineering principles before she died," Marcus replied. "She believed that understanding systems was the key to solving any problem." "And you developed these solutions while living on the streets?" asked Dr. Patricia Williams, the board's scientific advisor. "Survival teaches you to see opportunities others miss," Michael answered simply. Richard watched the board's transformation with satisfaction. The same people who had entered this room ready to demand his resignation were now hanging on every word from two homeless children. The total projected savings from implementing all recommendations, Mark, "We want the chance to learn," he said simply, "to be part of something bigger than survival. And we want other kids like us to have chances too," Michael added, "kids who see solutions but don't have anyone to listen." Richard felt emotion tighten his throat. In all his years of high-stakes negotiations, he'd never heard such pure, uncomplicated requests. The board voted unanimously to implement the twins' recommendations immediately. But more than that, they voted to establish the Sterling Innovation Fellowship, a program designed to identify and nurture unconventional talent, regardless of background or circumstances. As the meeting concluded, Margaret Chen approached the twins. "You've saved this company," she said quietly. "Do you understand that?" "We understand that everyone deserves a chance," Marcus replied, "even if they don't look like what people expect." 3 months later, the Sterling Industries building gleamed with new efficiency improvements. The Cascade project had been completely repositioned and was generating profits that exceeded even the twins' optimistic projections. The company's stock had not only recovered but reached all-time highs. Marcus and Michael had been placed in accelerated education programs that challenged their brilliant minds while providing the stability they'd never known. They lived in a comfortable apartment near the Sterling Industries headquarters, where they continued their work as the youngest consultants in the company's history. But the most profound change wasn't in the corporate balance sheets or efficiency reports. It was in the Sterling Innovation Fellowship, which had already identified 17 young minds whose unconventional backgrounds had previously made them invisible to traditional educational systems. Richard Sterling stood in his office, looking out at the Seattle skyline where somewhere other brilliant children might be struggling to survive while holding solutions the world desperately needed. The twins had taught him that genius doesn't always come with proper credentials or stable addresses. Marcus and Michael still visited their old observation point sometimes, not as homeless children seeking shelter, but as young innovators remembering where their journey began. They'd kept their grandmother's most important lesson. The best solutions often come from seeing patterns others miss. The notebook that had changed everything sat in a place of honor in Richard's office, its worn pages a reminder that extraordinary solutions can come from the most unexpected sources. Sterling Industries had learned to look beyond the obvious, to value insight over pedigree, and to understand that sometimes the most valuable consultants are those who have nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The rain still fell on Seattle, but now when Richard Sterling saw people struggling in its downpour, he wondered what solutions they might be carrying, what innovations they might offer if someone just took the time to listen. The homeless twins had saved his company, but more importantly, they'd reminded him that true leadership means recognizing brilliance wherever it appears, even when it comes disguised as two kids seeking shelter from the storm. In the end, Marcus and Michael hadn't just solved Sterling Industries' energy problems, they'd revolutionized how the company viewed talent, potential, and the unexpected places where genius might be found. Their grandmother would have been proud. Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.